Hello there. I hope everyone is doing well. So in this video I'll briefly discuss about parsing Sumologic queries. So let's get into the point. So usually we'll have a collector set up like this, then we'll have our sources set up under the collector. So collector is named according to the desktop or machine's name, or with the computer name you have provided. For example, my desktop has a default name by assigned for Windows 10 VM machines, and additionally I have a Kali VM, so where the machine name is like only Kali. So for both of these machines I have already set it up my sources previously, where using these sources I'll just show you a small example of parsing or Sumologic query to create a graph or visual panels. So let's move into this. So when you hover into a add sources, it will give you a small icon similar to some sort of pages. So if you click on it, it will take you to the source search query page or log search, which is called. You can also access to it by clicking on the add new log search. From there, if you do it, you have to manually type the sources, source category, host machine, etc. But if you want to find the sources easily, if you don't want to write any query, you can just click on this small icon. It will take you to the log search pages along with the specific sources that you are trying to parse. So here I can see my sources like Windows 10 VM tutorial, and the collector name is my host machine name. Additionally, if I don't want to keep this one as my source category, I can do in the following manner, like source category. Then I can select my source category. So whenever you are typing anything, it will give you options or different suggestions like what to select. So from there, if you have appropriate namings for each sources and collectors, you can easily find out so since my collector is currently, yeah, it is on, it shows on, so I believe my collector is on, or it was on previously. Right now I have already shut it down. So what I'll do is, like, instead of after you start with a query search, you have to define a time frame. So last 15 minutes says that, like, if you started your VM like 8:30, and if now is like 8:45, so the last 40 minutes will show you the query or the data of the logs or events from the 8:30 to 8:45. So that's what it's meant by 45. If the machine is currently turned off, there is no activity for last 15 minutes. What you can do is, like, by selecting last 6 hours, last 24 hours, 1 hour, whenever is the last time the Sumologic was updated with the logs or events. So for example, let's say I haven't used my Windows machine for last 3 days. So maybe I have turned it off like yesterday. I haven't used my VM today. So I'll try to look for log searches for last 3 days time frame. So I'll select last 3 days. I can press enter or click on the search button here. Either way is fine. So it will try to find the updated logs that it has collected for the last 3 days. So the logs or the messages that it will show you in the display, it will comes in different format. For example, for Kali, let's go to one example. Let's say I haven't run this. So there's not here anything. I hope so. So for example, for my Windows, the messages shows in a JSON format. I can view also like in the raw format. So raw format is what the data is collected in the Windows machine. So when we are when the Sumologic is collecting data, its formats the data from the raw to JSON format. It depends how you're setting up the sources when configuring the add source, like in the main pages. So whenever we are adding any sources, it will show us options like if we want to keep a legacy format or JSON format. Let me show you. So whenever we are setting a Windows event, it will ask us here like, hey, do we want to collect using legacy format or collect using JSON format? So for the Windows data, I have chosen like collect using JSON format. I don't want the legacy format because it will be similar to JSON format, but the parsing will be a bit complicated. We won't be able to parse by keys or the JSON key values. And as for the Kali Linux, as for the Kali Linux, the message that we are collecting, it comes in raw format. So in a sense, it's easier to parse Kali messages or logs, since if the messages are very small, if the message is like 2-3 row length, length big or length long, or longer, then it would be very not difficult. It would be very complicated to parse. We have to parse each field separately. In that sense, JSON format is pretty easier to work with. So let's move into parsing a key. So for example, I have moved into a next line by pressing shift and enter. So if I parsing using the keys or parsing from the messages, I don't need to press enter. Whenever you're pressing any key, it will add a new line in the query along with a pipe sign. Okay, so to start with the query, so let's parse selected keys. I started a so for example, let's say I want to have some message parsed from here that will give us an overview of what is the log is saying. So for example, let's start with the parse selected key. I started with the message, last one, and then parse selected key. So it adds like JSON. It will look for message keys, levels keys. It will also search for, let's add the channel, let's add the computer name. So it will look for the computer name, then let's add the channel. So I have some of the keys that I wanted to parse from the message. So I'll write the query to count this query. So the count will say that I want to find how many numbers of these keys have appeared in the overall logs. So I'll try to write the query. So count by, it will be comma separated. So then it will find out the event. It will actually aggregate the overall logs and try to find different data for me. So for example, it will go through all the logs, will find out an event ID, whatever the event IDs that have occurred, or whatever the event IDs are available in the similar messages. So it found me 318. So for example, event ID, where is that event ID? Event date, event ID 16, event ID 16, event ID 5379. So wherever it includes the word event ID, channel, computer name, level usually says information on warning or error, whatever, and the message, whatever the message it includes. So yeah, so it will give me aggregates of the overall logs data. Okay, let's not bother about it. Yeah, so it will give an aggregate. So when we have an aggregate, we will have the options to select different visuals options. So from here you can choose different graph, column charts, you can choose pie charts, you can choose scatter charts, you can choose different sorts of data, like whatever you want. and which whichever the visual graph will makes appropriate sense to your data. So when you have the initial aggregates will show you data in the table format. Let's say now I want to add this information into a dashboard. So what I'll do is like I can click on the new, find the dashboard here, give a dashboard an appropriate name. When you change the name, it will save the dashboard by default. In now what I can do is like click add to dashboard, give a dashboard an appropriate panel name, event, give a panel title according to your data or whatever the log search log search query you have written, or the parsing data you're parsing. So from the dashboard, if you click on, it will show you the dashboard that is available to you. So from here I will select the tutorial dashboard. So here it will show us panel time range. So the panel time range says whatever the time range it will select. So at the beginning I have told you like selecting in the last 3 days data. So it will say, asking me like if I want to inherit time range from the dashboard. So dashboard has additional global options to set a time frame, and another option is like use current time range as a panel default, the one that we have selected at the beginning, like these 3 days. So let's say I want to inherit the global time range from the dashboard rather than selecting the panel its own local timeline. So it takes you to the dashboard that I have selected. The time range was 15 minutes. It inherits the time frame here as 15 minutes. We can change the time frame by clicking here. Here it shows that inherent dashboard time range, so it is taking the 15 minutes. So let's say if I select the dashboard time frame to last 3 days, it will change the data to. In the meantime, let's say I want to create another graph but on different values or different data. So what I can do is like let's say I want to create event ID count only, want to check how many events, what are the occurrence of the events each time. So I'll just keep the event ID and remove rest of the events, rest of the fields. So it will show me or give me the only event IDs. From here, let's say I want to see the pie charts to see what are the occurrence of the different events. So it gives me a pie charts of different events occurrence. So here, let's say event yeah, hold on, yeah, let's say the event 537 has occurred 149 times, 21.2% of overall pie charts. So there is another event we can see is like 1034 that has occurred 22 times, 3.1% of the overall pie time. So it gives me an overview of the whatever the event ID has occurred overall last 3 days time period, and whatever the percentage of each event IDs. So let's say I want to add it to the dashboard. Let's say I want to use the current time range of panel default tutorial dash event ID. So let me click on it, add. So it has added the data. It will take some time to update. So this is the way how we parse data for JSON key. So for example, if you have a raw data